Hey people, it's Niles talking. Now, originally, this video was going to be titled Recommended Reading The Power of Myth by Joseph Campbell. However, I realized over time, whenever you put a recommended reading label on something, people don't click on it. Because we live in a very anti-intellectual culture. The minute you tell someone read a book, they get turned off. People are more likely to watch a blog than read anything. And I thought that this was an important topic, so I wanted to try and reach more people. So the idea, this links back to some of the other videos I've made, traditions for Tiwaniyans, Black Americans, and the idea of if people don't have myths or rituals in a society, how to have them. And I was reading this book by Joseph Campbell, The Power of Myth, and he talked about what myths are, what they mean, where they come from, what purpose they serve, and how the alienation of people from their myths and why people are becoming more lost. Now, I'm only not less than halfway through the book, so I can't talk about all the things. That's why I urge people to get that book. I'm going to repeat it. Joseph Campbell, The Power of Myth. However, I want to talk about a lot of other things related to specifically Tiwanian Black Americans. Now, one thing that is often hurled at Tiwanian Black Americans as an insult and something that's derogatory is to say Black Americans have no culture. That is not true. Neely Fuller, a Black American himself, once defined culture as anything that you do on a regular basis is your culture. So if you eat a burger every day as part of your, say, meal, and that is something you do no matter what, that becomes your culture. And I'll argue to this. And the thing is, it's not fair to say that Tiwanian Black Americans don't have a culture. It is simply that they are alienated from wider culture, and they also have a culture which, if you think about it and just look at it logically, it does not serve them. A lot of these rituals, traditions, and cultures are traumatic responses to things that have been done to them and a way of coping with the situation, as opposed to becoming constructive people and thriving. It's not a way of navigating the world, but as a way of surviving the world. So, I can comment on other things. So, you see a phrase that is commonly heard amongst the black sector, especially black feminism. They'll say, I don't need a man. Now, when you have a properly socialized mind, to come out with a statement like that is utter insanity. A woman saying she doesn't need a man is no different than a man saying that he doesn't need a woman, or that a man saying that a man's best friend is a dog or a woman's best friend is a diamond. To come out with a statement like that is not only to be alienated from the opposite sex, but to be completely alienated from the family, from the community, and from society and the nation as a whole. It is way more than someone who is brainwashed by feminism. It is a totally insane thinking that shows a deep disturbance within the mind and the psyche. And to give a different example, because people might not be able to comprehend it, it's like a man saying, I don't need water, I have whiskey. You think, what? But we need water to live. Exactly. It's no different. In order for people to thrive, they need other people. They need men and women to come together to produce families, and they need communities. I remember a woman who said to me, and this is relating to the whole aspect of culture and rituals and society. We don't know who we are. We don't know what it means to be a man or to be a woman, or how these things are necessary to the production of family and the continuation of the race. Nothing will make sense until we find the missing pieces and put them back together. And that's what part of this video is about. And this is more geared towards Tiwanian Black Americans, but it can relate to also all the people who are descended from the victims of the slave trade from the 1500s to the 19th century. So some of my ideas, and I've talked about this in Ancestors Day, the idea of a commemoration, but I thought reading that book, there has to be more of a ritualization It can't be just once a day, one day of the year. What do you do for the other 365 days? And I thought about the alienation from the self and the idea of what are people living for? So I had an idea. So there has to be a central theme of people's of something that connects people to their past and helps them plow a way for the future. So in Islam, we have to visit the graveyard a lot to remind us of death and to remind us of people who've gone. And I thought, well, how do we, a good way to connect people to their ancestors without sort of devolving into the idea of ancestor worship or thinking of the dead as gods? So think about this. Most black Americans, Tiwaniyans, are Christians. So every Sunday you go to church. And the new tradition would be, and after you come out of church, I don't know about when you go to church, say you come out at 12 p.m. or 1 p.m., you then go to the graveyard to visit your relatives. And this is every Sunday. And you take your children, you take your wide extended family, or any family member that is available to go. You visit the graves, and then you pray for the graves of the deceased. You then tell stories about them. And even if they are relatives who have died outside of your living memory, you talk about what they did, how things were in their life, what they had to suffer through. So let's say if they grew up, I don't know, in the segregation period, but died before things happened. So you talk about what happened. They lived every day. They would, they were not allowed to go to to the white school. They would have to go to the black school. They would have to walk in the segregated. They would have to make way for a white man if he walked up to them on the sidewalk, or the daily oppressions they had to go through and the daily struggles. But as well as that, you could talk about their lives, what they did. It says every day they put up with all this abuse and discrimination, go to work and bring home money to raise their family. Or about the triumphs in life, that despite all this, they managed to go to college, they managed to start a business, they managed to survive and thrive despite all these things. And this is a way of connecting the current day with the past in a way so that people do not feel alienated from the past. It's very easy for people to talk about why reparations are unnecessary. Even some black Americans say this. When people do not have an understanding of how they are connected to the past, that the dead are gone. They're dead or not. I remember someone saying a phrase that we are our ancestors. And this tradition I'm proposing is the idea to make the ancestors a living thing. That's something that we connect with and something we experience, rather than something we think of as in the distant past. Once upon a time, they walked the earth. They lived and struggled as we did. And they lived and struggled so that we could be here. And I also saw something in that book about marriage. And he said, in India, he talked about the marriage ritual is 3 days. It's no wonder people trivialize marriage when people don't even understand. It's just, you can go to Vegas and some random can then say, do you to pronounce this to be your man and wife? You say yes, you sign a document, and that's it. A marriage ceremony should not be something quick. It should be a powerful transformation. So it should be, say, maybe sort of something like a baptismal. So, all the men in your family, they bathe you and scrub you down. So, you are leaving single life and you are now entering married life. So, all the sins of your past, you are no longer a single man who can do what he wants. You are now in a commitment to a family. And the same thing could be done for the women. So they could have a baptismal ceremony where all the women of their family and maybe their friends and close associates can give them a bath. So they are now being baptized into marriage. And maybe it could be other things. So a man could plant a tree, and this is all done in a ceremony in, say, a wild area. So they will plant, I don't know, something like Well, it depends upon the environment. If you're living in Minnesota, you're not going to be able to plant grapevines. But you plant a tree, something that provides fruit, and you plant it in the wild, and this is a representation of children. So this is all part of the ritual. A man will do that, and then later on, maybe the next day, the group of women will go to that same location, and they will plant something in the general area. Obviously, for ecological reasons, you can't place two competing plants next to each other, but let's say within walking distance, say 30 to 40 feet of that. So they do that, and that's a symbol of children. You are symbolically planting down an effort to create life. And then on the third day, you have, well, it could be sort of like a combination of the Zulu ceremony. So you could have a representative of the husband's family goes to the wife's family, say, do you accept this woman as your, I don't know, what was it? A representative of the husband's family goes to the wife's, do you accept this man as your husband? And vice versa. And then a massive party where, how do you say, everyone celebrates, and how do you say, and a bunch of old things could be burned in a way to symbolize the end of something. So let's say you just take a bunch of old furniture, old books, old clothes. Assuming that these things do not have artificial things. Let's say it's just cotton and wool. Those things can be put on, and they can be burned along with our rubbish. And it's designed to symbolize the incineration of the old life. And it takes about maybe 3 days or so. 1 day for each one day for the next thing of burying and growing something, and then the third and final day. So it's a process. It represents something to the mind, and that this is not just here today and gone tomorrow. Because that's one of the things we have. Marriage is so trivialized. People think, well, you can just, if it's such a quick thing which is not impressed upon people, it doesn't really have much significance. And I could go on, but I think there's more that people can do by themselves, and I want Tiwaniyans Black Americans to just take these ideas and to just develop onwards. So, anyway, I would suggest once again to get that book, The Power of Myth by Joseph Campbell, and read it, and then start thinking about things that are more related to the Tiwaniyans Black American culture and things and rituals that would suit the unique needs of Tiwaniyans Black Americans. So anyway, I really hope this idea has given some ideas. Please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.